Hi, everybody. Wishing everyone a wonderful day. So, joining us here is Michelle Tillis, Lederman. And thank you so much, Michelle, for joining our discussion today, sharing about your work, your passion, and your how the connections working in the virtual program, as well as how people are being connected now in a pandemic time and moving forward. So, Michelle, would you please share a little bit about yourself to us and the audience and your journey, how it's all started?
Oh, well, that's a whole lot of sharing. If you want to know a little bit about me, I will tell you I am a travel junkie. I have been to over 70 countries. My goal is 100.
By
My
when?
children have been to 20 countries already, and they'll be to 26 by the end of this year.
Oh.
So, let's see, I'm an animal lover.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband tells me I'm an adrenaline junkie because I, on our honeymoon, had him jump out of a plane with me. And we've gone scuba diving with sharks and you name it, I'll try it with the exception of bungee jumping. So that's not my story, but that's a little bit about me. I'm a mother of 2 kids and I'm a mother of 2 rescue dogs.
What kind of dogs?
Wow.
They're mutts, they're rescues. They're big, one's a husky lab and the other's maybe a Catahoula leopard. We're not sure.
Okay, thank you for sharing very, very little of your journey, but just
But I
about
can
you,
go back to
okay?
the story if you want. I can tell you about how it all came.
Yeah.
So I'm actually a recovering CPA. So for those who don't know, CPA stands for Certified Public Accountant. I spent the first decade of my career in finance, and I believe that a lot of times we make decisions about our careers as an anecdote to something missing in our lives, right? So for me, I grew up without financial security. My parents split, and the money went with my dad, and we were left with selling furniture to pay the mortgage. So we had a house, but it didn't have furniture in it. And the furniture we did have was sidewalk sale and goodwill and donation, things like that. So when you have something lacking in your life and you feel a scarcity, you tend to make a decision to offset that. And that's why I went into finance. The other reason people make decisions, myself included, is based on our skill. And, we all think, oh, I'm good at this, I should do this. And I actually kind of will encourage people away a little bit from that way of thinking because I'm apparently really analytical and I'm great with numbers. I'm photographic for numbers. And accounting came so easily to me. And so I said, well, I'm good at this. It gives me financial security. I'm done. There's my career. But it was not a fit for my heart, for my passion, for my interest, for what engages me. And so I spent the first decade in finance constantly looking for the piece of it that would interest me, whether it was, well, maybe I'll do mergers and acquisitions for publishing because I love writing and I love that industry. But it was still doing finance every day. I tried consulting. I'm like, oh, I'm helping people solve problems. This is tapping into my creative brain. But it was, again, everything I did was to make somebody money, to make myself money, to save somebody money. It was just, it really didn't kind of feed my soul. So, I went and thought about, what feeds my soul, which is animals. And I thought, I'm going to study animal behavior. And I took some classes and I reached out to these professors and then I realized I would have to go to school for 5 years to make half as what I was making right then and there. And I was like, yeah, I can't do that. So I instead said, all right, I'm going to go to business school. I'm going to make a lot of money and I'm going to donate my time and energy to the animals. And so that is what I did. And I went to Columbia Business School to get my MBA. And I raised money for an animal rescue organization in Canada. And if you go to my Facebook, my professional Facebook page, and I think I sent you all the links, there's a photo album called Me and the Animals, and you will see me holding a Siberian tiger and nose to nose with a lion. So I got to, raise money for this and interact with the animals that way. And I've done a lot of things like that. So you'll see lots of pictures with the animals. So after business school, again, I'm back into the consulting world and, but still feeling like something's missing. And then 9/11 hit. And as I shared with you before we recorded, when 9/11 hit, I was actually in Thailand just a few weeks after my visit to Vietnam. And along with most people, we all got laid off at that time. And so I started consulting, not an employee, for a bank. And it was fun because it was a project here and a project there, and it kept myself engaged because it was something new every time. It wasn't the same old routine. My boss became the CEO of the Tokyo branch. And he said, Michelle, go hire somebody, go out to Japan, and go teach them what it's like to work for me. And I was like, cool, I've never been to Tokyo, let's go. And I hired a coach, paid her tons of money, way more than I was making, to go out there for a week. And I did everything she did and then some. And I was good at it. And I said, I found my calling. Wow. So this is what I'm to do. So at the end of the week, I said to the CEO, I can do this. He said, okay, but you still have to do everything else. I said, okay. Right? A typical man, right? I love his reaction to that. So I said, okay. And he enabled me to be taught, right? So he sent me to have a personal, training on presentation skills. He sent me to take classes. And every time he's like, all right, I want you to teach my team in Japan how to give feedback. He goes, go take a class on it. All right, I take a class, I write a program, I go to Japan, I teach it. And that's how I got started, doing it internally while still managing the hedge funds, the risk management, by doing I was the only woman on the trading floor at that time, and I was still doing all of that work, but I had this joy of getting to train and to teach, and there seated my passion. And so the place I went to take courses was called the American Management Association. And I went up to them at the end of one of the classes that I took, and I said, hi, I'm Michelle. I'm a communications trainer, and I want to train for you. And they said, well, let me see your resume. And I showed them my resume. They said, no, you're a finance trainer. I said, okay, hi, my name's Michelle. I'm a finance trainer, and I want to train for you. So, as people are thinking about what they're doing and what their next step is, wherever you are, you might not get the leap, but you get the next step. And so I made the stepping stone into the training world by training finance and being phenomenal at training finance. I was able to train finance through storytelling and fun. And I took the fear out of finance, and people loved my classes, and I had perfect ratings. So I finally went back to them and I said, hi, have I proven myself enough to you to let me teach communications? And they said, yes. And so it was that started the transition. And I'll take a breath now because I've been going on for a little while, and I'll tell you the rest of the story, but I'll take a pause to see if you have any questions about what I've shared so far.
Well, it's very exciting. We don't want you to take a break now. We want you to continue to share the story after that for the time being, please, before we go for questions.
Okay, I'll just keep talking.
Yes.
See, you guys don't know me that well, but I can keep talking for the whole hour. That's what I do now. I get paid to talk, which is really fun. All right, so I started doing this for the bank, and I kept trying to get the bank to make me an employee because my insurance was going to run out, and they said, no, you're too expensive. So one of the firms I was using, a risk management firm, to manage the hedge funds, I was at a meeting there, and they're like, we're looking for a director of marketing. And I said, all of my friends have been laid off. Tell me what you're looking for. I know someone, right? So this is me being the connector that I am. And they start telling me all of this stuff and what the job is like and what you would be doing. And I said something, and at the end of it, I'm like, wait a minute, did you just offer me a job? And they said, yes. And I said, I don't know anything about marketing. And they said, yes, you do. And I said, let me think about this. And I come back and I said, well, I promised my current boss I'd go to Tokyo one more time to help manage the, we'll wait for you, Michelle. Well, I want you to know that this is kind of a short-term plan for me. What I really want to do is this training. I'm going to be doing it on the side. No problem, Michelle.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, if somebody believes in me this much, that I'm capable of doing what they think what they want me to do, I'm game. So I started working for a 5-person startup risk management firm that has since been acquired multiple times. But there was only 5 of us working there, and I had a corner office looking out on the stock exchange, the New York Stock Exchange was my window. And it was fun. It was lovely people. It was a new challenge. And, within a few months of doing it, I landed my first client, which was JP Morgan Chase.
Wow, big one. Big fish.
Pretty good first client, right? And, the beautiful thing is, because I was so transparent with the company I was working for, I was said, hey, I'm going to go train at JP Morgan tomorrow. I'm taking a day off. I'm taking a vacation day. And they're like, good luck, Michelle. There was nothing hidden. There was no, pretending I'm sick. There was none of that. So it was lovely to have that transparency and that honesty and that trust. So the fun thing is how I landed JP Morgan. And this goes to all that I write about, right? So my first book was The 11 Laws of Likability, and my most recent is The Connector's Advantage. And it's all about how relationships drive results. So you know already that I love animals and that my volunteer time was dedicated to animals. And one of the things was the canine comedy benefit that I ran. And we would have stars, and we would have the animal charities, and we would bring them all together for a big gala. And I had 200 people volunteering for me.
Wow.
And we're working the event, and Grey Goose is a sponsor, and I don't know half of the volunteers, but one of them comes up to me, and he said, Donna told me what you're doing, what you're trying to build, on the side. And he said, don't remember his name? I mean, I'll call him John. I don't know. But Donna was my co-chair, and I had told Donna what I was trying to do. And Donna worked at JP Morgan Chase.
Wow.
But this guy comes up to me, and he said, do you want to meet my boss? And I said, well, who's your boss? And he said, the head of training for the investment banking division of JP Morgan. Wow. And I was like, let my jaw come off the floor, please. Yes, please. Yes, please introduce me to your boss. And he did. And I landed my first client. Wow. And it was because of relationships and connections and connecting on something that we had a shared passion on that made him want to help me without me even asking. So that's how I landed my first client. My second client was Morgan Stanley.
Wow, another big fish.
So, I'm a finance girl. This is the world I understand, right? These are the people that I knew. Actually, it might have been Deutsche Bank, my second, maybe no, I think it was Morgan Stanley, but I'll tell you the first 3 clients because they're all really important stories, right? So the second client was because I was on my way to a wedding. And it was one of my dearest friends that I've known for, at this point, 40 years. And she's an opera singer. Now, she got a few of us to share a ride out to her wedding. And so 4 of us are in the car, and everyone's like, well, how do you know Debbie? And how do you know Debbie? And I said, well, I'm her only business friend, right? And the person in the front seat said, no, I'm her only business friend. And so we started talking about, well, what do you do? Well, what do you do? Well, she was in human resources at Morgan Stanley in training and development.
Wow.
So that's how I landed Morgan. So she invited me in, met the COO, landed the client, and I taught for Morgan Stanley's new manager program for years. Because of a friend in a car on a way to a wedding.
Wow.
So that's how I landed my second client. And my third client, right, was Deutsche Bank.
Deutsche Bank, yeah.
Deutsche Bank. So when I don't even know how I got my first introduction to Deutsche Bank, but the first introduction didn't go anywhere, right? I figured out who I was supposed to call. Somebody made a warm introduction for me. No response. All right. And then my friend on the trading floor of the bank that I worked at, the one that I discovered myself at, he ended up moving to Deutsche Bank. He left the bank we were at and went to Deutsche Bank. And I'm like, oh my God, who should I talk to there? He gave me the same name. I'm like, she didn't respond to me. I'm like, well, would you try to introduce me? And he's like, sure. So he introduces me. No response. Right? Okay. I tried. I'm then at Columbia Business School, which is where I went, and I'm in the career services department to meet with the head of career services, who was a friend, who I was also courting as a client, who also became a client. And I'm sitting in the recruiter's lounge waiting for her, and I start chatting with this guy named Jay. And Jay is recruiting for Deutsche Bank. And so I asked him, I said, I've been meaning to connect with somebody there. Who should I connect with? Same name. And I said, I've reached out to her before, but, we never connected. He pulls out his card, writes her name on the back. And I said, would it be okay if I used your name when I reached out? He said, absolutely. So I reached out again and I said, Jay suggested that we connect. We met, 5 minutes later, I get an email.
Wow.
I've been hearing your name all over the place, Michelle. We need to meet.
Finally.
Finally.
And that's client number 3.
Wow.
And so the moral of that story, right? I mean, each story has a little moral, right? So client number 1 is think about the connections that you make when you're doing the things that you love to do, because people don't connect on what they do for a living. They connect on what they like to do, their common causes and their common values and their common passions and their common people and their common places. And when you share a passion about a charity, you have a connection that goes deeper than most, right? So understand that you are always connecting and you're always building relationships in all of those areas of your life. Story number 2 is, you never know who knows who. And if you enjoy a relationship, don't worry about that relationship being the means to an end. Build the relationship because you enjoy it, and understand that relationship, you don't know who their next door neighbor is. You don't know who they went to camp with. You don't know who they're married to. You don't know who their parent or child is. And it is the second connection, the third connection that might lead to something, but build the connection that you want to build. And so that was number 2.
Wow.
And story number 3 is actually a chapter out of this book, which is the law of familiarity. Is that you want to kind of stay in somebody's mind, but not get in their face, right? I didn't bombard this woman. When she didn't reply, 2, maybe 3 attempts, and I let it be. But when you think about, commercials are based on the idea of familiarity, right? If you hear something enough, you begin to trust it.
Yeah.
And so you trust the common sources and the associations and the frequency, and if enough people know me, then she's willing to say, I'll give this person a chance. And that's the idea of familiarity. And giving it multiple chances, not giving up too quickly.
Wow, it's a very beautiful story that you share. Yeah, it brings me to the curiosity because I saw on your LinkedIn profile you say that when you were very, very young and you were 10, right? And then you already in the business of helping people to do their works better. You already enjoyed connecting with people. Uh, but then back then, how did you feel about connectedness and how did you feel about building human relationship and what different from there to now?
So I think you're referring to what when my 10-year-old son asked me what I do for a living, and I didn't know how to answer him. So I said, I help people work better together. And I was like, oh, wow, that is what I do. I think I have evolved a lot because when I was younger, I think I had a lot of anger. I had like a chip on my shoulder. And I was kind of like, I don't need anybody. I am who I am. Love me or leave me. Like it was very defensive, and I think I've evolved a lot from there to the fact that I do need people, and that it takes a village, and it's okay to ask for help, and there's been a lot of shifting in. I do love who I am, and I am who I am at the same time. It doesn't mean I can't continue to work on myself, to improve myself, and to flex and adapt to others to enable that connection to happen. I don't need to be so rigid. So I think it's been definitely an evolution, but I do have friends in my life, in my home in the last few months that I have known since I am 5 years old. Since I am 8 years old, since I'm 10 years old, since high school, right? So I keep those friendships, and I nurture and I ensure that even though we might not see each other for a year, that the connection still lives.
Michelle, all the things that you did, right? It's not. I feel like it's not like out of the blue. You're doing something heartfully, wholeheartedly, and then eventually all the dots connected to build you to be who you are today. So it's not coincidence. Everything you do is based on what you really enjoy doing, what you really care, and then you care the charity works, you care the friendship you have, you care the I think that you do care that you can provide a good service for the bank, so that you're persistent to to lead into that third plan that you had, right? And so my question for you is how did you ended up writing the book about the 11 laws of likability? It happened after you landed all the jobs, right?
Yes, and so I'm going to come back to that question, make sure I do. But there was something that you just said that about the connecting the dots and things happen that resonated for me, because what you're talking about is actually in my most recent book. I talk about the 7 mindsets of a connector, right? And it's a certain way of thinking and being that enables what I call the connector's advantage, which is faster, easier, better results. And it didn't just happen, right? One of the mindsets of a connector is having a clear vision and knowing what you're working on and what you're working towards. And I didn't have this vision, right? I never had the vision of where I am right now. My vision was usually, what do I want to accomplish in the next year? I want to get, X number of clients. I want to get repeat clients. I want to get an inventory of programs so I don't have to design something every time I get hired. And so it was just a vision of the next thing. But when you have the clarity, then you make the progress. Without the clear vision, you can't get the advantage because you don't know what you're working on. So that's one of the 7 mindsets of a connector. And I do want to be clear, you also said that I did the things I loved. And before I said, be careful with thinking I can only do the things I'm good at. Because a lot of people will say, oh, I'm an introvert, I'm not really good at this. some of the best connectors I know are introverts. All of this can be learned. Anybody can be a connector. And I didn't think that when I started my research. But the research showed that there is not a huge differentiation between some innate ways of thinking between connectors and non-connectors in terms of, emotional intelligence. A non-connector can have emotional intelligence, and so can a connector. Those differentiations weren't huge, which taught me that anybody can adapt these mindsets and these behaviors and achieve the same advantage. Okay, so you had said some things that resonated, and I want to address them, but I will come back to your question.
Yes.
So, all right, so if we go back into the story, I'm working at this small startup, and I'm landing my clients on the side, and I'm taking my vacation days. At the same time, now we're around, so 2001 is when I started the transition while I was at the bank. Now we're around 2004 and 2005, and I got my appointment at New York University's business school. So I was an adjunct professor at NYU, and then I got pregnant with my first child. And I had to go back to them and say, it's okay. I have 3 weeks after the semester before I'm due. We'll be okay. So all of this is happening while I'm working, and I am putting my husband through business school now. I'm pregnant. I'm working full-time in finance. I'm an adjunct professor at NYU, and I'm building my business of clients on the side.
Okay.
So I was a little, right, Vivian, I love your expressiveness because, right, as a woman, you understand, it was a lot.
Yep. How did you find time to do all of that?
Right, and I'm cooking a baby. And the CEO of this startup said to me, Michelle, something's got to give. You can't, it's too much. And I said, well, the baby's the most important thing to me. And he's like, well, you're not acting like it. Now, not a lot of people could say that to me and get away with it, but he could. And he said, something's got to give, and it's got to be us. And I'm so grateful for that because he gave me permission to leave and to wean myself off of the finance salary because I was already making money. I was already an adjunct professor at NYU. I was on the Rutgers Executive Education faculty. I was on the faculty of the American Management Association. And I had my own clients. So I had a business. It just wasn't making as much money as my finance salary. But I went from 5 days a week to 4 to 3 to 2. And by the third quarter of 2005, I was fully in my own business. And my son was born just a few months later.
Wow. What month was he born? Was he born?
Pardon?
What month was he born?
He was born January 9th.
January 9, okay.
So, I have always been my own boss since I've been a mother. And that was one of my clear visions, is wanting to have the flexibility to be in the front row at everything, but also I love working and doing something I love. And so, I kind of built the business with that vision in mind of having that. So I am now in my own business, still putting my husband through business school, and I have an infant. And so that's all great until, you realize that my child had special needs. So he didn't have any receptive or expressive language, and he was diagnosed with pervasive developmental disorder, which is a spectrum disorder, if you're familiar with the autism spectrum. And so now, and by the way, I'm pregnant with my second child. My children are only 17 months apart. So when my son was 8 months, I was pregnant with my second child. And at this point, at least my husband has graduated from business school. So I had to send my child to a special needs school and they required a parent to be on site at all times.
Wow.
And the reason I'm sharing this is because it is the answer to your question about how did the book come about. One of my training programs was called The Natural Networker, and I delivered it at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. And at the end of that training program, one of the people in the class said, you need to turn this into a book. And I said, yeah. He's like, no, you need to turn this into a book. Well, I had already had 10 book ideas, including that one. And so when I had to be at the school every day, and my husband actually had a job now, so I had to be the parent on site. I had to tell all my clients, I'm not available for a year. So I said, what am I going to do? Oh, I'll write a book. And that's kind of how it came about. And so then it was, which book should I write? I had all of these ideas, and I thought, oh, this book will write itself. I already have a course. I already know what I'm going to write. So I, getting the agent and getting the offers was, again, a story in relationships, right? Because I hired somebody to help me with the proposal. He introduced me to an agent. I also went to the American Management Association's publishing division because I worked for them, introduced myself. My agent got me other offers and finally got them to get, and so basically at the end of the day, I went with the person I liked, not the big firm. So Macmillan, which is a huge name, offered to publish the book, and I turned them down because I liked the editor at the small house better, and it was a great decision for me. So that's, it didn't write itself. It was a 3-year process, right? So, it was a really long process of, having the decision to write the book until that book was on the shelf was 3 years.
How could you find all of the strength and courage during that very challenging time of your life and still being so positive, so upbeat, Michelle?
There's a term that I think I came up with. It is called optimistic reality.
What is that?
Optimistic reality.
Optimistic reality.
And so the idea here is, and this came from a child who wasn't talking and who was tantruming sometimes for 2 hours, where he would flail and I would end up with a bloody lip and a black eye because, I'm trying to contain him. I said to myself, I know that my child will be happy. I know my child will talk. I know my child will be a functioning and fulfilled member of society. I also know that it's going to take a lot of work to get there. So I'm living in reality. I had 12 therapists, 45 hours a week of therapy for this child. And I managed an Excel spreadsheet color-coded by the type of therapy for his schedule. 12 therapists telling me how to raise my child and having to fight with them to wanting to even potty train him. And again, optimistic reality. I said, look, I believe that people live up or down to your expectations. I believe my child can do this. I'm going to give him that opportunity. Wow. And my child lived up to that. And he potty trained at the same time as any other average child. So it is about believing in the possibility. And this is actually one of the mindsets of a connector. So another chapter of this book is the mindset of abundance. And it's not that everything's wonderful, but it's about the possibility of it being better than it is. And not even just the possibility, but the probability. And so that abundant attitude, which is a very difficult one, and probably the hardest one for me in all of them, especially as somebody who came from a place of scarcity. We all have scarcity, right? Scarcity is real, it's tangible. We know it, we experience it. Whereas abundance is intangible, it's an idea, it's a belief. And it is a very hard thing to shift. But that's kind of, and it doesn't mean I don't fall into those moments, but then when I recognize it, it's bring myself back and shift back to, okay, how can I think about this abundantly? How can I have optimistic reality here? And what do I need to do to make that happen? Because optimistic reality isn't just, I can think good things. The reality piece is I need to do things
to make it happen, right?
to make that optimistic vision happen.
Wow. You're very determined in whatever you do, and we are so admiring you. I think that my level of admiration for you is even higher than the 45 minutes ago that I met you, or the month ago that I've been research on the work that you do. So thank you for sharing these very personal stories to Vivian, to me, and to our audience. There's a lot of good lessons for us to rethink about how challenging we've been facing on a daily basis, but then easily to give up, versus what you've been through, in your life. And I have a question I would love to ask you because this relates to me personally. Okay, I'm a connector myself too, and I got discouraged a lot when I was young. I got discouraged a lot when I grow up also because the people see is that you go into a fancy world, you talk to strangers, you talk to the people that are irrelevant to your work, to your day, and things like that. But to me, it's all related. I just want to talk to people and feel, hear, and get to know their lives. And I think that and then and then with that discouragement that I under, and it's a lot of stress that I also got at certain point in time. So having a network of a lot of people as you are having, it's not easy to maintain those kinds of network. It's not easy to grow those kind of network, and it's not easy to make the best for everybody inside that network. So how did you have? What is the secret sauce for you to build and nourish those networks yourself?
A lot of people have like CRM systems, client relationship management systems, and I don't have systems. I have my way. And so one of the things I always say is find the way that works for you. For me, I use Outlook. Like that's my system. And my thinking is if somebody comes into my mind, let them know. That's kind of my method. So if I think about somebody, I'll try to jot their name down and put it in my calendar, right? So everything, I just put it as a to-do list in my calendar. And I'll just send a note saying, I was just thinking about you. It's been a while, catch me up. What's up? Just drop a little note. And I'm not perfect with it. I don't get every single person because somebody's come into my mind twice since we've been on this call, and I want to just jot their name down so that I remember to reach out to Jeff. Because he came into my mind.
Tell Jeff that's because of us also, right?
Yes, I'll tell Jeff it's all because of this. So if it's a business thing and I'm on a call with somebody, I'll say to them, when should we reconnect? And I will then go forward to my calendar 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and I will put their name and when we talked last and what we talked about and why I'm reaching out. So that when 6 months from now come and I see their name, I have something to remember. And then I say, hey, when we talked back in April, we said, let's reconnect now. So I'm reaching out. Let's set up some time.
I see.
And so that is just people can fall through the cracks, but you know what? I'm not the only one responsible for all the relationships.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. That's a lot of learning for us. So we keep in mind when we think of someone, just write it down. I just have one curious question. Would you give a bungee jump a try in the future? With all the heart attack sport, like you share with us, and then you exclude a bungee jump. Yeah.
I don't want to be upside down. Jumping out of a plane, I loved jumping out of a plane. That was fabulous. But bungee jumping the upside down,
Michelle, I'd like to ask you a question related to you coaching leaders to be likable, to be creating connected leaders, right? And what's wrong with leaders that make you teaching them, that area, that topic, that skill?
So I love that you brought up my signature keynote, which is connected leadership, because I think when you have connected leaders, you have connected cultures, you have connected communities, and when you are connected, right? So when employees feel that management believes in their contribution, them, they are more engaged. When employees are more engaged, they're more productive. When they're more productive, that goes straight to the bottom line, right? So it benefits all from the business mind. But more than that, it predicts happiness on the job.
Predict
Right?
happiness in the job.
If you have a best friend at work, it is a predictor. If you have good work relationships, it is a predictor of happiness on the job and job satisfaction. So why is it important? All of those reasons. You are going to be happier at work. You're going to be more productive. You're going to work better, harder, more. And it's just all of the good stuff that you feel around that work. It's more than work. I don't work for an organization. I work for a person. I work for a mission, right?
Yeah. Wow. I earlier.
Dog, please.
we said the dog going outside this time, so he might meet in. There might be a stranger coming to our neighborhood. So I'm sorry for the noise. Did you hear?
I love the noise. I'm amazed my dogs didn't bark.
Earlier today we talked to Michael, and then Michael Lee Steller. I think he's also your friend.
I know. Yes, Michael also contributed to this book, and he talks about connected
and then
cultures.
for some reason we also talk about.
I know them already.
For some reason, we also talked earlier about human connectivities and the importance of connectedness in an organization that make the employees more engaged, and they contribute to the bottom line. So for some reason, for today we had the privilege to talk to two of the experts at the same time regarding to different kind of connecting, but it's how small the world is to us, I think. And that's the beauty of connectivity, right? Connecting. So, Michelle, we would want to come to, I think it's the last question so that you can preserve your time for your next call. I don't want to give you just 3-5 minutes before your next meeting. So, is there anything exciting that you are planning to do in the short term, in the next year or so that you can let Vivian and I and the audience have the privilege to know that now?
The exciting things is the travel we have planned. All the things that got canceled from 2020 are happening this year, so I'm very excited. But I also just started a LinkedIn newsletter. So that is a great way for people to connect with me on LinkedIn, is to subscribe to the newsletter or follow me there. I'm always sharing one of the campaigns I'm doing this year. As I said, people connect about charities. I'm doing a 50 for 50 campaign, and I just turned 50. And I am donating $50 every week of my 50th year to a charity, and I'm allowing my followers to nominate charities that are meaningful to them, and they might make the final list.
Oh, what a beautiful things that you are doing. Vivian, we're turning 40 this year, so we can do the $40 for for the whole every week in the years, right? To just follow.
It's a wonderful experience to learn about all these charities and what's important to people. It's a beautiful thing, and it's contagious. Giving is contagious. That's actually the newsletter I wrote this week is about the contagion of kindness.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of the amazing things that you shared today. There's a lot of things that touching me personally, and I'm so proud of what you do. I'm so we really admire all the achievements and everything that you do, and we thank you for your time, for coming to the show and share your personal story and everything with us and the audience. So we really appreciate it. Okay.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
And then, as we said earlier, if you come to Vietnam, you shout to us. You let us know. Vivian and I will be so happy to take you guys around town this time. Okay.
I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye bye. You have a nice day then. Have a nice meeting.
You too.